Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 103. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us on this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Of course, we are talking to you on a Tuesday, one day after the legal tampering period began. And Dave, I think we have a couple of topics to talk about today. Jam-packed show. We'll try to keep this as condensed as possible because news is fluid and changing. And hopefully by end of day, we know who the Steelers quarterback will be. As of now, still just one quarterback under contract in Skylar Thompson. I imagine Pittsburgh wants to change that as quickly as possible. It's taken a lot of twists and turns one day into official free agency, Dave.
Yeah, we do have a lot to talk about today, coming off of really an exciting first day on, or exciting Sunday, I should say, with the DK Metcalf trade, and you kind of wondered how the Steelers would follow that up and all, and they did a little bit there, probably not to the degree that people were obviously hoping for. And Alex, I think we're going to be busy watching the Pat McAfee show today, like it or not. I think he's going to have a lot of Steelers fans probably watching that, especially is it confirmed Aaron Rodgers will indeed be on today? I mean, is he on every Tuesday during the offseason too?
I hadn't been able to even check, to be honest. They had mentioned he was out of the country for the last couple of weeks. He was going to be on at some point soon. I frankly hadn't even taken the time to look at when that was going to be, but typically his day is Tuesday.
All right. Well, we'll see. And we'll see if we just get some sort of finality to the Steelers quarterback position by the end of the day, or at least by Wednesday, end of Wednesday, because obviously Wednesday starts the new league year.
Well, let's start there with quarterback, Dave. That is still the main topic on the heels of the DK Metcalf trade. You get your receiver. Now you wonder who's going to throw to him. It will not be Justin Fields. He has agreed to terms to sign a 2-year, $40 million deal with the New York Jets, the team most rumored and connected to Justin Fields over the last 72 4 days or so. They've really picked up steam on that, and Pittsburgh reportedly made a contract offer to Fields about a week ago. They never heard back, and Fields goes to the Jets. One reporter at DD Kinkle-Balla reporting Pittsburgh not offering guaranteed money past the first year. The Jets did, and so money and potentially opportunity leads Fields to the Jets. With Sam Darnold going to Seattle, the numbers begin to dwindle for the Pittsburgh Steelers as their next quarterback, and I think all roads are pointing towards signing one Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it feels like it might be down to Rodgers or Russell Wilson. And if you believe some of the reports out there, I think Dulac and a few others out there thinking that this is Russell Wilson's not even in the picture to kind of loosely quote some of the reports out there. I broke down the details of the Justin Fields contract came in this morning, and it really is pretty cut and dry. 2 years, $40 million total. He got a $15 million signing bonus. He got a 2025 base salary of $5 million, which is fully guaranteed. That makes his 2025 total cash take of $20 million. And then in the second year of the deal, he has a base salary of $20 million, and $10 million of that reportedly is fully guaranteed. Now they did put 4 additional void years in there just to help with them and the cap charges. The Steelers obviously don't like to use void years other than the COVID year when they used it there. But he'll have a cap charge the way this contract is set up of just $8 million in 2025, $23 million in 2026 with the Jets, and then assuming the contract indeed voids after the 2026 season, a $9 million dead money cap charge with him. Could the Steelers have done the same quote unquote total value deal of 2 years, $40 million? Yes, obviously they could have. Even not having the void years in there, if they would have went with a $15 million sign with the same first year structure, $15 million signing bonus, $5 million base salary, even on 2 years, that would have produced, let's see, what's 15 and 15 divided by 2, that's 7.5 and 5. That would produce just a $12.5 million cap hit, on that. But the problem probably became that guaranteed money in the second year with him, because $40 million total, $30 million of this is supposedly guaranteed. Even if they would have been willing to meet the terms of 2 years, $40 million, they probably would have had a problem with the guaranteed money in the second year. And that.
But don't they do that for quarterbacks? Don't they do guaranteed money?
They do, but they didn't do that with Mitch Trubisky though, right? So you're I can't remember if they did that with Mitch Trubisky.
But that was a smaller contract.
Yeah. They obviously could have done this. The fact of the matter is did they value him at $20 million per year? The Jets can still get out of this though after the first season. Now, in doing so, it would be throwing $30 million at him for 1 year. The Steelers obviously could have done the same if they wanted to. So, they like Justin Fields. I think I believe them in the fact that they probably would have liked to re-sign Justin Fields. I just don't think that they were wanting to re-sign Justin Fields and guarantee him any money in the second year.
And probably had a lower valuation on him than the Jets did, is my guess as well, in overall money. So contractually, just my 2 cents on that. No surprise to see Fields get this type of deal. It came in above market projection, but you look at supply and demand, the lack of quarterback options in free agency, in the draft, Fields' own personal growth and what he improved upon in his 6 starts in Pittsburgh, and having some sort of market at least with Pittsburgh and the Jets and maybe other teams potentially involved as well. No surprise to see Fields get what he got. Do you think there were other non-contractual related reasons why Fields turned down Pittsburgh to go to the Jets? Do you think he was still feeling some type of way from being replaced midseason? I know Russell Wilson was always considered the starter in Pittsburgh's depth chart and in some of Mike Tomlin's language, but still, point is, Fields was 4-2, playing relatively well, and to get replaced midseason while your team's in first place, I'm sure did not sit well with Justin Fields.
Yeah, there were a few reports kind of stating that he's wanting more of a guarantee, I guess, and maybe he did have some sort of a trust issue overall when it comes to whether or not he thought he not liking the way he was treated, basically, as you stated there last season there. So could that have played in it? It will be interesting to see if he's asked about that in his first press conference with the Jets, and what kind of answer he gives. I would imagine he'd kind of not create too many waves overall, when asked about that. But anyway, I mean, could it have been part of the issue? I mean, obviously money plays the biggest factor overall, right? So, but there might have been some trust issues that led to him seriously looking elsewhere.
Sure. And obviously Fields said all the right things and never complained publicly. I think handled the situation as graceful as possible. Remember that press conference he did basically right after Wilson became the starter, and Fields talked about he didn't play well enough and put it on him, and there was no finger pointing publicly, although I'm sure, again, anytime a competitor and player like Fields, goes from starter to backup and barely plays the rest of the season, not going to be happy with how things unfold overall. So I think that probably was a factor ultimately in this thing. But as you said, contractually, it seems like the Jets had a much more competitive offer than Pittsburgh had for Fields.
Yeah, and now look, I mean, how's he gonna like that that New York media, right? And look, maybe he was just total. Maybe Fields also, would like to go somewhere that maybe will utilize his athleticism a little bit more. We kept hearing about the Justin Fields package, and yeah, he was dinged up a little bit later on in the season, those kind of things there. But uh, I if the money had been right and the guarantees had been right, I think he would have been back. But I do think the Jets probably valued him a little bit more.
It seems like it, at least in financial terms of it all, and he reunites with his former teammate at Ohio State, wide receiver Garrett Wilson. I'm sure that played a factor as well. And the Jets, while they've been a mess for so long, it is a whole new regime, and it's probably some exciting new things that Aaron Glenn, the new GM, could probably try to sell Fields on. So ultimately, he leaves. Darnold goes to Seattle, which was the expectation even after they traded DK Metcalf. The belief was Darnold was going to go to Seattle, and that happened after the Geno Smith trade that sent him to the Raiders. And so for Pittsburgh, it's to me a two-horse race, and it's really probably a one-horse race of Aaron Rodgers. Because to me, Dave, if Pittsburgh wanted Russell Wilson, and I know publicly they said they wanted to re-sign one of their own, Fields or Russ, Wilson would have signed by now because he wanted to come back. I believe him on that. I think that's totally his desire. And with Fields off the board for now, basically 24 hours, the fact that Wilson has not been re signed, there's not been any reporting about Pittsburgh trying to re sign Russell Wilson, tells me they do not want to bring him back, which then leaves you with essentially one name and one name only, and that is Aaron Rodgers.
It certainly feels that way, unless Wilson's just trying to keep his options open a little bit longer, just to see, maybe he's not liking the guaranteed money in the second year. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is not liking. Maybe that's why it's taken so long, is to try to, have a standoff with these guys. What if it's the same contract being offered to both guys? Is
I
that
don't know.
plausible?
I mean, to me, if the unless it was such a terrible offer from Pittsburgh, like intentionally lowball, we don't want you to take this offer, but we're going to send it so we can at least say that we sent an offer. I think Russ would be taking it because he wants to come back to Pittsburgh. His market outside of Pittsburgh is still murky. The Giants seem to also be making a play for Aaron Rodgers. And if it's not the Giants and if it's not Pittsburgh, then I don't know where Russell Wilson would end up. So it's all speculation, obviously. But again, to me, the bottom line is if Pittsburgh truly wanted to bring Russell Wilson back, he'd be a Steeler right now. Yesterday, they would have re-signed him and just pivoted from Fields to Russ, which tells me they are waiting to see what Aaron Rodgers decides to do.
Yeah, I mean that's fair enough at this point. So you would be shocked if Russell Wilson is the quarterback at this point.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how to quantify my emotions, but I'd be very surprised. At this point, I think Rodgers is the clear front runner and clear favorite. I mean, if you had to put odds on it, Dave, or who this team's next quarterback will be, Rodgers, Russ, or the field, what would you what would your odds be on that?
Well, I mean, just based off of all the, and you don't know what to believe out there throughout this whole thing, right? They want Fields. They want Field. I mean, this thing has gone so, and then it got into Darnold territory, and that kind of stuff there. Just based on the most recent smoke, I mean, you'd have to have the heavy odds on Aaron Rodgers at this point. But especially the longer it takes.
Sure. And the question is, what is the holdup? I think some early reporting, maybe you can speak better to this, Dave, was that Rodgers is still deciding, and there is some sort of a market between the Giants and Pittsburgh. I mean, to me, if the money is comparable, even if the Giants are offering a bit more, how would Rodgers not choose Pittsburgh? More stability, a head coach he reveres, a better chance to win, a good enough supporting cast, less of a crazy local media market. I mean, he's made almost $400 million in his career. Does he need to chase every single penny in his last contract of his career with 1, maybe 2 years left in the tank? To me, it's not a choice if the options are Pittsburgh and the Giants.
He's a pretty vain guy, though, so about the money and all. But yeah, look, he's talked glowingly about Mike Tomlin in the past over the years and all like that. And if indeed this is going to be his last stop in the NFL, why wouldn't you want to play with two guys like DK Metcalf and, assuming George Pickens stays, George Pickens? I mean, gives you two great targets to throw to. You can get out of New York in that media market there. You don't have to play at MetLife Stadium. I bet he'd be glad to get out of that stadium for the most part as well too. So. I mean, we'll see. I think we both agreed yesterday on the live stream, on last night's live stream, though, and that, if it was apples to apples, contractually and all like that, I would be more apt to go with Russell Wilson at this point over Aaron Rodgers. And Stephen A. Smith, of all things that, that comes out of his mouth, kind of put it kind of in the same light as way I'm thinking right now. And it's mainly because DK Metcalf's coming to the Steelers. Those two have a relationship, obviously, from their time in Seattle. And Russell Wilson is a deep ball, moon ball guy. Metcalf is obviously a deep ball guy, as is George Pickens. You have the continuity coming out of 1 year of working with Arthur Smith. For the most part, Russell Wilson protected the football last year. If your offensive line developed better, if you're able to keep those two safeties back and develop some sort of running game, could you make it work with Russell Wilson and not have the end of the year slide that you had with this team? Would it be enough to build on and maybe at least get you into the playoffs and win a playoff game this year? I would be more apt to go that way, but once again, most of it would be dictated by the fact that Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf have played together, and he would know how to talk to them. You already have that relationship there because Metcalf's going to be a type A alpha type personality. Russell Wilson's already dealt with that. How will Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson's already dealt with George Pickens as well too, right? For a full season there. How is Aaron Rodgers going to come in and get past that initial? And Aaron Rodgers has dealt with his personalities of wide receivers over the year. I'm not saying that he can't, but how long of an adjustment time is it going to take for him maybe to his personality mesh with a guy like DK Metcalf and George Pickens? And will it mesh? And will there be more problems than more bad times than good times, especially when things aren't going maybe particularly well in there? And at least Russell Wilson, you've got the track record of him already working with DK Metcalf and George Pickens. So it wouldn't be a huge swing, to my opinion, of going with Russ over Aaron Rodgers. But if anything would sway it, it would be DK Metcalf arriving.
Yeah, I mean, this offense, listen, I was not one pining to bring back Russell Wilson, but you have built this offense to run the Russell Wilson show, which is moonball, vertical, outside threats, throw it deep. Wilson still has the live arm, and you have the targets to support that. Rodgers has a good arm, too. There's no question about that. He can still flash, but this is still Russ's game, and for all the reasons you mentioned, the chemistry with DK Metcalf from their time in Seattle. Then they also work out in the offseason too. They always train out there in San Diego. Yeah. So they were always staying in touch even after Wilson got traded to Denver. You have the relationship with George Pickens, and they showed good chemistry overall. And you talk about the volatility of the big personalities of if you add Aaron Rodgers to George Pickens, to DK Metcalf, to just the media attention that will come along with all of that. That is some Mentos and Coke kind of explosion right there. So for all those reasons, from the limited options Pittsburgh has, and listen, there was never any great option at quarterback. Even re-signing Justin Fields, which was my preference, was not going to be necessarily the solution that was going to lead Pittsburgh and become Super Bowl contenders. You're choosing from a lot of mediocre to worse options right now, and I still believe the long-term future for this team to truly get out of this purgatory stagnation they're in is going to be drafting a quarterback in the first round, probably, hopefully, maybe in the 2026 NFL draft. But based on the current options, Russ versus Rodgers, yeah, I would take Russ as well. We'll talk more about Rodgers if and when that becomes more official in a later show. We got a ton of other stuff to talk about today. I think Rodgers can still play, but he's 41. You question him whether his body can hold up. You question, is the juice worth the squeeze of all the attention that comes along with it? And then you wonder, okay, this time next year, are you starting from scratch again if Rodgers either A, doesn't work out, or B, retires, or C, something else happens, or he's not your quarterback next year, and you're again wondering, are we starting over again with a brand new quarterback? This is a cycle Pittsburgh has done for year after year. It's not stable. It's not going to provide consistency, continuity, or any sort of results. And Pittsburgh seems to be going through this endless cycle of trying a different type of quarterback, and you can't really build anything whenever you consistently just put in a new face every single season.
Yeah, look, whoever they sign between Rodgers or Wilson, or God forbid it go deeper than that, you got to get at least a 2-year deal done, because you got to at least protect yourself of not having to go through. Obviously, signs would point to this team either drafting a quarterback sometime at some point this year, and potentially, depending on how that works out, I mean, you could see him have go the first round route next year in 2026. But at the very least, I mean, you're in a lot of uncharted territory the last couple of years, or especially this offseason, when you talk about going into the offseason technically with 0 quarterbacks under contract. And we've seen how this has gone so far. I mean, Skylar Thompson's probably walking around with his chest pumped out the last couple of days in Pittsburgh, because he's the only one under contract, and still is as of 10:45 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Now, obviously, that's going to change, but you've got to get somebody in this building. I mean, what's DK Metcalf thinking about right now?
Well, he's counting his money as soon as he inks
Yeah,
that contract.
but he hasn't signed it yet either. So, but I mean, obviously he's still thinking, man, who's going to be throwing me the football here?
Sure, sure. I mean, there's a long-term play. Obviously, it's a 5-year contract. He's in his mid-20s, and so hopefully there's eventually a first-round quarterback coming to Pittsburgh. I mean, listen, I didn't want Rodgers before. I'm not going to change my tune just because he seems like the path it's going to go down. Can you have some success with Rodgers on the field? Sure, but I just don't think it's going to end well overall. And even if it goes okay and you get similar results, where you're a 9-10 win team, make the playoffs, how much has really changed? And are you in the same spot next year? It would look that way. Because certainly, even if it is a 2-year deal for Rodgers, the storyline as soon as the 2025 season ends is, okay, is Rodgers going to retire? What is the status of him? What does your quarterback situation look like? You're in the same boat, same offseason discussion that you're in right now. And that is just not a place where winning franchises can survive in and thrive in.
Yeah, the limbo that is being in search for your next franchise quarterback. And look, I mean, never forget, you're in the AFC North. You got 2 great quarterbacks in there, Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. And if you're going to compete this year, you've got to be able to compete with those 2 teams, particularly within the division, before you even think about playing outside the division. So, you would have to think at this point, I mean, will Cincinnati and Baltimore be in the playoffs, barring catastrophic injuries in 2025? It certainly does feel like it, right? So it feels like the Steelers are playing to try to be the 3rd team from the AFC to get in the division. I mean, to
Well,
get in the playoffs, right?
I don't know if they view it that way. I think what it would mean if they were to sign Rodgers was, we still believe that we can make a serious postseason run right now, and we're going to go make the splash move with Metcalf, which is, again, a long-term view, not just a short-term thing, but it's obviously a big splash move for the here and now, which is great. We endorsed it. Really good trade. Happy about that, regardless of the quarterback situation. I mean, if you could say anything, if your quarterback situation is going to be less than ideal, you better have some good receivers to throw to that could hopefully mask that to some degree, at least not entirely, but again, to some degree. But yeah, to sign Rodgers says that we're trying to win and win now, which is always the mentality in Pittsburgh. Not a surprise, but especially to try to maximize and capitalize on this defense before it ages out, before Kim Hayward retires, before TJ Watt gets even older, before Minka Fitzpatrick gets into his 30s. So Pittsburgh wants to win and wants to win now. That's always their philosophy. And these moves and reported moves, or the moves that feel like they're going to materialize, reflect that.
Look, you owe it to at least guys like Cam Hayward and TJ Watt at this point to not bring in a Gardner Minshew or insert next tier quarterback in there. You owe it to them to bring in a guy who has won. Right.
Well, I think it's even less about the low tier veteran, but they don't want to start over with that rookie. They did try that with Kenny Pickett. It didn't work. And Tomlin, I think, wants a veteran that can come in, doesn't have that learning curve, doesn't have that projection of the unknown of what this rookie's going to look like. They don't want to do that again in the moment because they want to win now, and they think a veteran is the guy who can do that. Even though I would argue that if you look at rookie quarterback success, you've certainly seen Jane Daniels, CJ Stroud, etc., turn franchises around in a really quick fashion.
Right. But I mean, you can't bank on that, obviously. How much is too much, Aaron Rodgers, Alex?
Well, that's where it gets interesting too, for contractually, and you can speak to this better than I can, because I've always had a tough time judging the quarterback markets this year, although I do feel a little vindicated in the sense of we both felt like Fields was going to get more than what the market projections and some of the outlets were reporting and predicting.
He got pretty much right at what we said, right?
Yeah, I mean, I bounced around a little bit, but we were in that like 2 for 30, 2 for 40 range, and we were above what the 6 million, I think, Spot Track had him at, and even above, I think, what Joel Corey, who we like and respect, had him at, which is 15 million per season. So yeah, I think we had a pretty good sense of it all. With Rodgers, I really don't know where that number would be. I think it's a harder number to narrow down. Mike Florio certainly made waves yesterday. He says that Rodgers wants to play in Pittsburgh, and this latter part was more his speculation, and he quote his semi-educated guess, but he thinks 2 years, $90 million, $40 million guaranteed. It's a big number, obviously. It sounds high, but the quarterback market is the most expensive market in the NFL, obviously. So is it that crazy, Dave? What would be a number for Aaron Rodgers?
Well, you're talking about what, $45 million per on a $90 million total of 2 years there. Aaron Rodgers is coming off of a deal that paid him $37.5 million. Did he play well enough to have his market value go up along with the escalation, the inflation of the cap? He can make an argument. He probably thinks he's as good of quarterback as Matthew Stafford is right now. Yeah, it's not going to be long before the Patrick Mahomes deal gets redone at $45 million. Kirk Cousins isn't going to probably stay on the list at $45 million much longer. Deshaun Watson's sitting there at $46 million. Do you think Aaron Rodgers is saying, my God, this guy isn't even playing right now, and he's got an APY of $46 million? Do you think Aaron Rodgers thinks he's a better quarterback than Kyler Murray, even at Aaron Rodgers' age right now? And Kyler Murray's at 46.1. If I'm him, I'm bumping for at least 40. There's not there, I don't know if I'm willing to. I mean, obviously, supply and demand at this point is going to play into it. There's only so many teams out there at this point that need a quarterback, and of those teams that need quarterbacks that are going to pay, $45 million. So he is at the mercy of that. Okay, I guess it goes back to the question I asked you. How much is too much for Aaron Rodgers? I would say the number at that Kyler Murray is at would be the highest ceiling, and that's 46.1.
Okay, so a 2-year, $90 million contract is technically below that, so that seems plausible?
It sounds plausible as people drive into their ditch. Am I advocating for that? Look, I mean, we're talking about value here. You're talking about a guy that's a seasoned veteran. You're talking about a guy that even though he wasn't great last year, stayed on the field. Well, let's pull up what he did last season real quick.
The numbers don't look bad if you just looked at a box score, which is just
Right.
one, of course, data point. But the numbers, as you'll talk about, I'm sure, do not look bad.
28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He was sacked 40 times. Just a 5.87 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. Not great, you know. Now you're paying for that experience. You're paying for that knowledge. You're paying for been there, done that, type of aspect with him. Once again, I'm not advocating the Steelers go 2 years, $90 million with him, but I can understand where Mike Florio's throwing out this number at. I would think, if you want to truly get into the how much is too much, I do think at 46.1 it becomes too much at that point. But once again, I mean, if you want to go, people can say, well, look, you can't control the Cardinals overpaying Kyler Murray. You can't control the Browns overpaying Deshaun Watson. You can't control the Falcons overpaying Kirk Cousins. But those numbers are the numbers, right? And the cap has escalated, and to some degree you're paying for that veteran experience and everything that comes along, everything good that comes along with Aaron Rodgers. So I would say, how much is too much? Probably 46 million. Let's make it around 46 million. And then anything below that, I think you can work with. I mean, ideally you'd like him to come back on the number that he's coming off of, which is 37.5 million, or obviously cheaper.
Sure, I'm sure some would say ideally he doesn't come to Pittsburgh at all, but that may not be an option at this point. I don't know how to answer how much is too much. I think you framed it well. I just look at the market forces, and that's what the market dictates, and that's all that really matters in this discussion. And the other factor is that Rodgers has other suitors, at least one in the New York Giants, and so that's going to keep his price tag up. Because if it was just Pittsburgh and Rodgers was the only place he could go, Pittsburgh could offer a lower contract and really utilize some leverage against Rodgers to come to Pittsburgh or continue waiting for some potential unknown or retire. And I don't think Rodgers wants to retire. I think he wants to play at least one more year and not go out the way that the 2024 disaster of a season was for him and the Jets, where the team sucked. He didn't play that great and everyone got fired. And so if you have the Giants in the mix who want Aaron Rodgers, it seems like they're both competing for him. That's going to keep his price tag up. But man, David, it's hard to think about 2 years, $90 million for Rodgers when Pittsburgh ostensibly did not want to offer 2 years, $40 million for Fields, and just got off a season where they got to pay Russell Wilson 1 point something million dollars to be the starting quarterback. To go from all that to Rodgers at 2 years, let's just say even $80 million is a wild jump.
And here's the thing: with either of these guys, with Rodgers or Russell Wilson, do you want to guarantee money past 2025?
I mean, they didn't do it with Fields. I don't think they would do it with any quarterback on a 2-year deal unless they felt like they had to, because at this point, if you lose Rodgers and if you don't want to bring Russ back, then as you've talked about, you get into the really, really bad place of having really no earthly idea of who your quarterback is.
Yeah, and then how much, assuming that you don't guarantee money, how much? Look, they want that either one of these guys, they want on at least a 2-year deal, right? So it becomes how much are you willing to pay this guy for what could reasonably be just 1 year? Is that number 30 million, 40 million, 45 million?
I imagine, and I don't know how the Giants do their contracts, but I imagine the Giants are going to offer guaranteed money in year 2 for Rodgers.
They got a mess over there, don't they?
They do. But that could be the reason. If you thought about reasons why Rodgers would go to the Giants, it would be for that, and maybe the same way that Fields left Pittsburgh for the Jets.
Right. I don't know. I'll tell you, it's a cop out, but I would think the range is somewhere between 35 and 46 million.
Yeah, no, I think that's
a large range. I know, but mean, you got two guys here that are, veteran guys up in years, and they're looking at this list and they're looking at the cap going up, and they're no dummies when it comes to this. They've done,
And just to interrupt here, I apologize, but not that he was ever in big contention with Pittsburgh, and I think no one's going to be sad about this news, but Daniel Jones finalizing a 1-year deal worth $14 million with the Colts per Adam Schefter. And so it was down to, I think, the return to Minnesota or sign with the Colts and Daniel Jones off the board going to Indianapolis.
And that makes sense. They wanted some sort of reasonable, at least competition, someone to turn to with Richardson over there. So
Right. So that makes sense, but he's now officially off the board, which is fine. I had even less interest in Daniel Jones. I think you were in the same camp, but that's a good fit, and that's kind of the expectation of where Jones was going to end up. All right, Dave, we'll table the quarterback talk here and hopefully get more clarity to really dive into it for probably a future show, which could be as soon as Tuesday evening. We'll see. Let's talk about some other reported moves, non-quarterback related action. Pittsburgh reportedly agreeing to terms with one outside free agent in Malik Harrison, the inside linebacker, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens to Steelers linebacker pipeline continues. Patrick Queen last year, Malik Harrison reportedly this year, 2 years, $10 million. And that seems to be an Elandon Roberts replacement. And we know that because Roberts has agreed to a 1-year deal to join the Las Vegas Raiders. Well, he'll replace former Steeler Robert Spillane, who cashed in with the Patriots on Monday. And so it is the circle of life of inside linebacker. Roberts out, Harrison in.
yeah, I don't think you had Malik on any of your lists, did you?
I barely had inside linebacker on my list.
Didn't have that on my list as well, too. Yeah, if you start circling back through this thing and what they did with the Cole Holcomb contract last week or whenever that happened, not too long ago there, and you started kind of wondering what's going to happen with Elandon Roberts at that point, and the fact that Tyler Matakevich, if he did return, it'd be no guarantee that he makes the roster. You look at Mark Robinson and his situation at this point of his career. And then you fast forward to them coming to terms with Malik. It raised eyebrows, the total value of that thing. Now, we don't have the full details of the 2-year, $10 million deal. I would imagine it's only $4.5 million in 2025. Immediately, I went to the snaps and looked at how he was used over the last several years. And the thing that jumped off the chart with me right away was this is a guy that played and averaged over 300 special team snaps over the course of his 5 seasons in Baltimore. Obviously did play some on defense. He was integrated kind of played a fair amount of snaps in that defense last year overall in place of who was the linebacker there in Baltimore he played in place of.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Who with Malik? Who was he filling in for mostly in that?
Late in the season?
Yeah,
Trenton Simpson? Is that
Simpson,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, just look at his snaps overall on special teams, and then you look how he could potentially be used as, a quasi, not as good, I don't think, downhill player as far as Elandon Roberts goes, but Elandon Roberts really didn't give you much on special teams. The first question that popped up to me last night, and I think you answered it late last night, is how many players across the league have averaged over 300 snaps on special teams and played over 1,500 special team snaps over the course of 5 years? And I think you said he's like ranked 7th overall, right?
Yeah, since being drafted in 2020, he has the 7th most number of special team snaps, just under 1,600. And it's very similar to what Tyler Matakevich has had, what Miles Killebrew's had.
All right, so look, they didn't bring this guy in to start, but they did bring him in to absorb potentially some Elandon Roberts snaps, and then most notably be a core special teamers.
That's my view of it. It's a Roberts replacement, and that was made even more clear after Roberts signed or agreed to a deal after the Harrison news came in. Harrison played in base packages on rundowns. You were right, actually. He played some edge linebacker for them in Baltimore, especially early in the season last year. And then when Simpson lost his role, they expanded Harrison's role along with Chris Board, his teammate there, and he played some off-ball linebacker. He played edge in their 5-down fronts, which has become more popular. The Bengals run 5-down fronts, the Eagles do it. And then in their 4-2-5 or 4-3 or whatever they were running, any sort of 4-man front, Harrison would play off-ball linebacker. Didn't play on third downs, didn't play in obvious pass situation, didn't play in 2-minute. He was a base downhill player. He is cut from a similar cloth as Elandon Roberts. They are similar in terms of their strengths. They are run defenders. But to me, Dave, just one-to-one, who's the better player watching the tape? Roberts was more physical, more intense, more of a tone sitter, better tackler, better blitzer, better hitter overall. Harrison's strength is going to play the run. I imagine he'll get a look to be in that 3-4 base role that Roberts had last year with Wilson and nickel, Queen every down. But the tape to me was not even that consistently impressive against the run. In coverage, you're going to get very little as a blitzer. You're going to get minimal production from Malik Harrison. So I think if Peyton Wilson progresses, takes a sophomore leap, improves his run defense, that is an issue that I could see Wilson really overtaking Harrison that regulates him to a reserve special teams role. But as you said, there is at least an extensive resume there for him to add value to your team on game day.
Yeah, and we'll see what the contract says. But I mean, this could very easily just be a $5 million split overall. But I mean, the fact that they got it done as early as they did with sort of a I mean, you wouldn't view him as a guy. You wouldn't have paid Malik to come off the board first day of tampering period, would you?
I mean, deals can range. He certainly was not one of the top free agents, so it wasn't somebody top of mind, but we know that deals big and small can happen early on.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet this comes in with first year money of being like 4.5 million. His cap charge should come in well under 4 million, and with the idea that he could, play some on defense and be a core special teamer with you. So not going to move the needle much. And look, I mean, Elandon Roberts supposedly got 1 year for 3 million. I'll be interested to see how much of that is guaranteed. Now the Raiders did lose Bob Spillane, so they probably want to try to fill that hole with the same kind of downhill type player. Bob Spillane, got to give it to Bob Spillane continuing to stick and Bob Spillane has got a football magnet in him still as well too. Always around the football last year with the Raiders there. So the Raiders obviously wanted to kind of maybe the same type of player as him. So it makes sense to go after a guy like Roberts after losing Spillane. But you telling me that Elandon Roberts not worth $3 million to the Steelers?
Yeah, I hear you. It sounds like Pittsburgh wanted to get younger, and maybe they thought Roberts. You asked the question last week, how many years does Roberts have left in him? You said maybe 1, 2
Right.
years left, and so as he gets into his 30s, Pittsburgh may have thought, let's get younger at that position. And I do think, obviously, as you said, Harrison's going to offer a lot more on special teams, and so that's going to be important. Because one issue with Roberts was, he ate into Peyton Wilson's nickel snaps throughout the season because Roberts was so strong against the run, and Pittsburgh needed that. But in theory, your Roberts role guy is going to play maybe 15 defensive snaps a game. Pittsburgh had a record low number of base snaps last year, and so if you're only playing 15 defensive snaps and not offering a ton on special teams, you're not really maximizing the game day value of that hat. And Harrison can at least do that because he'll be a 4 or 5 phase special teamer. He also led the Ravens in special teams tackles over his 5-year tenure with Baltimore with 12, according to StatHead Pro Football Reference. So he's been productive on that phase. But my view of it is that Pittsburgh wanted to get younger, have the additional strong special teams value. I don't think they got better one-to-one at inside linebacker, but I will say that's not going to make or break this front seven,
Right.
whether or not Malik Harrison plays well. What will is how Pittsburgh upgrades the defensive line. They released Larry Ogunjobi. We'll talk about that here in a moment. How well Peyton Wilson does in year 2 in the NFL, how well Patrick Queen does year 2 in Pittsburgh, and just how well this defensive line can keep linebackers clean. If you keep linebackers clean, any of them can have success, and Harrison had good tape whenever he was unblocked and able just to run and hit. He does have good hit power. So it's not the end of the world, but to me it is disappointing because I do think from a linebacker perspective, defensively, it's a downgrade.
Look, this it and throw up your hands and say, that's it. The Steelers lost the offseason, but for $3 million, Elandon Roberts, you could figure out what to do with him back in this defense, but they
Sure.
do, they do get a solid special teams player, and people are going, the main pushback here is you can't give a guy $5 million per year to mainly play on special teams. That's the pushback at this point.
Yeah, and I think maybe a couple of years ago that would have made more sense as an argument, but the cap is so large of what it is, that's kind of a drop in the bucket because I think you have to look at cap percentage, not just overall monetary value, and so it's not eating up much of your cap. I mean, Killebrew, what was Killebrew's 2-year contract he signed last year? 7 million, 8 million, a little inflation on that, a little more defensive value Harrison has. It's not an unreasonable contract, especially to get that done on day one.
Killebrew, 2 years, 6.5.
Okay, so I mean it's lower, but Killebrew offers no real defensive value outside of the occasional goal lines package they have for him. So again, and then you're paying the free agency tax, which is always overpaying players virtually across the board. I will also say on Harrison, a lot of missed tackles, Dave. I think he was charted for 10 last year in that limited couple hundred snap roll, 15.4% missed tackle rate per Pro Football Reference. That was fourth highest among linebackers with at least 50 tackles last year. So he can hit and he can deliver a blow, but he seems to fall off guys too often.
And as far as his special team, for a guy that plays as much special teams as he does, pulling up his special teams tackles, 8 total special teams. He was second. Looks like he was second on the team last season in special teams tackles for the Ravens with 8. Chris Board led the team with 10. The year prior to that, in 2023, looks like just 3 total special teams tackles for Malik Harrison. 2022, when Malik, just 4 total special teams tackles. So, even though he's played a lot of special teams snaps over the course of the last 5 years, last year looks like it was his most significant season as far as total special teams tackles went, with 8.
Yeah, is that from StatHead? What was the reference on that?
That's from NFL GSIS,
Okay.
their official website.
Okay.
The league official stats website.
I think it's a little different than StatHead, but StatHead can be a little unreliable in calculating special teams tackles. But I think he again was at least their leader in tackles over his career. Obviously he plays on return units too, so it's not all tackle based. He played on the field goal rush team. He's got a field goal block in his career, and so there is a lot of value there. But yeah, I just think it was a downgrade from a linebacker perspective. Now, does it offset based on youth, based on the special teams value potentially? But if you had re-signed Roberts, and even if he played a little on special teams, you still had a 4th inside linebacker, Mark Robinson. You could add a 5th guy, a Medikevich replacement to play on special teams. You would still have core special teamers to round out your depth chart.
All right. Let's good breakdown on that. People can view that on SteelersDepot.com, the full breakdown that Alex has of Malik. So good job getting on that right away. What else? What else do we have to tell the people about Slay? What the latest with Slay is?
Yeah, one reported signing, but one that's a little murkier in terms of if it's officially happened or not, is Darius Slay, the cornerback from the Eagles. Now, he's going to be released, at least reportedly going to be released tomorrow, Wednesday, when the new league year officially begins. And so the reporting is that there has been an agreement, but then there was reporting that disputed if there was officially an agreement or if the Steelers and Slay were still just talking. Mike Florio theorizes the Eagles could still be trying to trade Darius Slay. They just traded away Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to the Texans moments ago. Does that impact Slay? I wouldn't think so, but we'll have to wait and see on that. So we're kind of assuming Slay will be a Steeler, but it doesn't seem like it's 100% officially going to happen just yet. And we'll have to see what tomorrow brings when these veterans like Aaron Rodgers start getting officially released.
All right, and this is on brand for the Steelers with these older cornerbacks over the years, right?
It's the fourth straight year they've signed a veteran outside number 2 caliber corner, and most of them have been of the older variety. Go back to Levi Wallace in 2022, who was younger, but then Patrick Peterson in 2023. You trade for Dante Jackson in 2024, and now appear to be adding Darius Slay for 2025. Pittsburgh, I would like to eventually get off this roller coaster of replacing this Rolodex of names at outside cornerback, but I think Slay can still play. I know there's a lot of comparisons to Patrick Peterson, and I get that on the surface, but I think Slay has more left in the tank currently than what Peterson had whenever he came to Pittsburgh. And obviously, I think Pittsburgh's going to be intrigued by the veteran presence that Slay brings.
And you would think he's got 1 year left in him, right?
He had said on his podcast he wants to play at least one more year. You know, what happens after this year, who's to say? But this would likely be the assumption of a 1 year thing. Is it a 1 year contract? We're not entirely sure. Typically, they've been signing these guys to more multi-year deals. Levi Wallace got 2 years. Peterson got 2 years, even though we only saw one of it. It's probably, my guess, they would be a 2 year deal with some sort of roster option bonus in that second year where they can decide and Slay can figure out his future after 2025.
Let's look at this from a 1-for-1. Dante Jackson, we're we'll be next in we're going to talk about because he's left and signed with the Chargers and all like that. 1-for-1. Who's the better player for 2025 for this team?
I hadn't done my deep dive into Slay yet because I wanted to make sure this thing's actually going to happen before devoting that time. But I think the easy answer would be Darius Slay's the better cornerback right now.
I would. That's my initial thought as well too. And look, what this would do, assuming this comes to fruition, because there's still the question about can Corey Trice, who is Corey Trice Jr.? Can he stay healthy? Can he start logging more snaps and give you quality snaps on the field? Can you develop him? There's still a lot of questions revolving around him. Bringing in a veteran like Slay, at least you hope to get one season out. You still go into the draft with the idea of potentially addressing the position. We'll see what the Steelers do moving forward in free agency here, maybe with a potential slot to help compete against Beanie Bishop there. But if the price is right, this would make sense. It's not going to move the needle a lot in the eyes of a lot of Steelers fans, especially if the look is that you got an aging veteran coming in here. Probably only going to get 1 year out of them. But if you look at losing Dante Jackson and you're trying to piecemeal this thing together to at least give you some insurance with a guy like Corey Trice. It makes sense from that aspect. A guy that's played a lot of ball, a guy that likes Mike Tomlin, a guy that should fit in okay in the locker room.
Right. As you said, somebody that has openly spoken about wanting to play for Mike Tomlin if he could no longer play in Philadelphia. I know he mentioned about him wanting to go to Detroit or going back to Detroit, but who did they sign? DJ Reed. And so that probably took Slay out of the running there. Does this, assuming it happens, and then you kind of touched on it, Dave, does this kind of make a play for, okay, let's see how Corey Trice looks? Is that maybe why Pittsburgh did not want to commit a long-term deal and big money to a corner because they feel like they have something with Corey Trice, but obviously the health history is hard to trust. And so you have this kind of 1 year stopgap with Slay to get through this year, evaluate Trice, and then see if Trice can truly stay healthy and be a starting corner for, say, 2026.
I think the Steelers before the draft, they try to kind of fill the holes a little bit and then still address a position in the draft. I still think you got to address a position in the draft at some point.
Early though, like our early pick on an outside corner. Do you think that's in play?
I mean, starting in round 3, I think it is at this point.
Okay, I suppose it's either a 1 or a 3 because there is no 2 right now with that being shipped out in the DK Metcalf trade. So fair, but I think what this would tell me, Pittsburgh didn't want to have to pay a crazy amount of money in a hot cornerback market. and they just obviously paid DK Metcalf. They didn't want to probably make another huge splash financially before the quarterback situation was even figured out. And then B would tell me that they're optimistic on Corey Trice, but they know they can't just have Corey Trice and just hope he stays healthy. And so you have Slay, you have Trice, evaluate this year, and then if Trice can stay healthy and prove himself, then he may be the starter in 2026.
It gives you a lot of options that way, and if indeed Slay winds up being the guy, once again, I and assuming nobody else is brought in, that you can get a couple more years out of, as an outside corner, and right now the list is kind of exhausted now, right? As far as these
Yeah,
guys,
all the big names signed yesterday.
right? So, I just think this is kind of a typical, Steelers kind of move, and gives them a time to see what they can do with Corey Trice, and then in the meantime draft another younger player to see if you can develop to play on the outside.
The concern is it's already an older defense. You had a 34-year-old corner to it, and again, Pittsburgh has been rotating through these veteran outside corners with generally below average success. And so you wonder, can Slay break that trend?
How attractive is Slay going to get here over the next 48 hours to potentially other teams, though?
It's a fair question. I mean,
Especially
I think
now that the list has been dwindled down quite a bit.
yes, but the teams that needed quarterbacks already signed those guys, and so they're off the board for somebody like Slay. I think in general, a 34-year-old corner is not going to have a ton of interest to begin with. So you never know. I can't predict what's going to happen here, but I think the expectation is reasonable to believe that Slay will ultimately end up a Steeler.
All right, we'll have to see how that shakes out, what the money is for sure.
All right, Dave, some other more, not housekeeping, but internally for Pittsburgh, they made one roster deletion yesterday. They officially released Larry Ogunjobi, a move that was expected. I think it took a little bit longer than what I thought it would. I thought it would happen pre-free agency, but I think Pittsburgh wanted to wait. But that move happens before his roster bonus comes due. Is that later this week or next week, Dave, on Ogunjobi?
It was after this, a couple of days after the start of the new league year. So the writing was on the wall. Why did it take this long? I surmise maybe they were just trying to give it a couple more extra hours to see maybe if a trade call came in for him or something like that. But we've had the discussions about him. Will they or won't they? Is he worth the $7 million? Will they completely gut the room, even with a couple of these other guys in free agency? And you know, had there not been the trigger of the roster bonus there, you could have potentially held on to him and then see how things played out. But I think the fact of the matter is they didn't want to tie themselves to that. And once you pick up that roster bonus that he was due, you are kind of tied to him. So they just didn't want to run the risk of throwing more, money at him and then maybe potentially having to cut him later in the year. He deteriorated as a run defender over the years. Not the best pass rusher at this point of his career. He just not worth $7 million. And that's kind of been my thought on Larry Ogunjobi. You hoped that last year would have been, you would have seen glimpses of what you saw before he suffered that injury several years ago, and you just didn't see it. And this team's got to get better against the run. They've got to get younger in that room, and it made too much sense to me, especially when you had that trigger of the roster bonus there to send him packing.
His role reduced in 2024. He had a smaller sub package, grouping of snaps. Keanu Benton took that over. 6 sacks in 3 years. When he signed that 3-year extension, which was really the first move Omar Khan made in GM in 2022, we both found it kind of curious and said health's going to really dictate this thing. And while he was healthier this year, thought he had a good start to the season. His play kind of dropped off from there. The overall production wasn't there. Reasonable to cut him, the right decision, but now you've cut a technical starting left defensive end and somebody still played a good amount of snaps. Loudermilk's a free agent. Dean Lowry's still on roster, but was inactive to end last year. You got an old Cam Hayward. You have Benton, who I think underwhelmed a little bit last year, didn't take the leap that we thought he's capable of and still is capable of. And so now you have a lot of work to do to improve your defensive line.
Yeah, you have a lot of work to do. Montravius Adams is who he is at this point. on that defensive line as well. We know now Jonathan what's his last name?
Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave to Minnesota.
Jonathan Allen won't be coming. Javon Hargrave won't be coming. The defensive tackle groups supposedly they had interest in Ken Law, and he's off the board now. What does the free agent list look like at this point?
It thinned out pretty quickly. B.J. Hill returned to the Bengals, for example. Milton Williams, which always felt pie in the sky, but he got a deal done with the Patriots for crazy money there. And so the good news is the draft pool is deep, and D-line still remains a clear front runner, I would say, to be the Steelers' position of choice at pick 21 in April's draft.
Right. The moment they traded, as we said the other day, the moment they traded away that second-round pick for DK Metcalf, and then now that you've cut Larry Ogunjobi, I wouldn't advise a mock draft to not have a defensive lineman in the first round for the Steelers.
Ditto. Just a quick sidebar here. I have not listened to the quote. I'm just reading the tweet from Mike Garafolo. It says the Giants have had, quote, good conversations with Aaron Rodgers and have let him know they believe he and wide receiver Malik Neighbors would vibe well, end quote. And so the Giants still pursuing Rodgers. Could vibes and contract help convince him to go to the Giants? If Rodgers does go to the Giants, and you really wonder what Pittsburgh will do at that point, but we'll cross those bridges later on.
Alex, you and I have had good conversations this morning.
Would I vibe? We vibe well.
I think we vibe pretty well. We have our moments where you probably want to break me in two, but I dare you to do it. But
so does Aaron Rodgers, I'm sure.
There you go. But no, we sit and we wait.
There you go. All right, Dave. Other Steelers news that it's been made official. Ryan McCullum.
At least Daniel Jones won't be coming to Pittsburgh.
That's true. We can take comfort in that, at least. Ryan McCullum, the center back of center, had 2 starts in place of an injured Zach Frazier this year, held his own, was tendered and signed his tender, and so he will be at least on the offseason roster, a good chance to be the backup center in 2025. And Jaylen Warren was tendered at the second round level, and so I guessed original round, you guessed second round. Point goes to Dave Bryan. Good call on that, and that will virtually guarantee that Warren will be a Steeler in 2025.
Do I get a point for Larry Ogunjobi as well, too? Because I was pretty definitive about that. I think you kind of wondered what side of the fence. Do I get 2 full points for that?
We'll grant you the 2 full points.
Okay. Where was I on? What did I say the other day on Dante Jackson? Did I say he was going? Didn't I?
I think you did. I think we both were in agreement on that. Yeah.
What else? Okay. Let's rewind through this real quick. Warren, second round tender, not shocked there. That, he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler this year because no team is going to sign him to an offer sheet. The big thing there was the right of first refusal because him being an undrafted free agent. Had you taken the gamble there to essentially around a $2 million gamble there, you see a guy, even though this running back class is deep and all like that, you run the risk of potentially losing Jaylen Warren to an offer sheet and not getting anything in return there. And they obviously now have lost Najee Harris to the Chargers. We'll talk about this. Just guarantees that you get Jaylen Warren back in that room for a little more than $5 million there. So I'm not shocked there, and I don't think at the core you're shocked overall when it came to Jaylen Warren. McCollum was one of the 2 players scheduled to be exclusive rights free agent. Jeremiah Moon, the other one. I'm guessing that both those guys got exclusive rights tenders for the minimum. The fact of the matter is that McCollum has signed his now. It's hard to imagine them not tendering Moon at the minimum. It's just the fact that he probably hasn't signed it yet. So I would expect Moon to come across here at some point signing the tender. That's a little bit more than $1 million, a minimum 1-year deal for McCollum. Not a huge needle mover there when it comes to them. And then once again, I would expect at some point here over the next couple of weeks, we'll get the announcement that Jeremiah Moon signed his 1-year exclusive rights tender.
Yeah, we'll let you know. I mean, if that doesn't happen by Well, I guess if he's been tendered by Wednesday, then he won't become unrestricted, right, Dave? He just maybe hasn't signed a tender yet.
If he hasn't been tendered, we will know. We should know, I think, by Wednesday when the league releases the official sheet of free agents.
Okay, sounds good. But yeah, I think the second round tender on Warren, even though I thought it was going to be the original round tender, I think the second round tender is the right decision for a little extra peace of mind to make sure you
Right.
have Warren after you lose Najee Harris.
Right.
All right, Dave, let's talk about the slew of Steelers who are no longer Pittsburgh Steelers. In addition to Justin Fields signing with the Jets, several Steelers are agreeing to terms with other teams. Again, these things will become official on Wednesday. I probably use agree and signing interchangeably, but they're all verbal agreements until Wednesday. Just to recap off the top here, Dave, James Daniels to the Dolphins, Dante Jackson to the Chargers, Elandon Roberts to the Las Vegas Raiders, Dan Moore Jr. cashing in big with the Tennessee Titans, and I say Najee Harris to the Chargers as well. So he'll become teammates with Dante Jackson.
Look, God bless Dan Moore Jr. getting that kind of bag that he got. We talked about the tax and all like that. There's I understand you have needs and all like that, and the position's a valuable one in the NFL. And is Dan Moore ostensibly the worst you could get out there? But there's no way I'd pay him that kind of money. But Dan Moore's a fine guy. Fit in real well. Good guy. I root for guys to get paid. I always will and all like that. But that's rich, brother.
And that money, by the way, is 4 years, $82 million for Dan Moore. I knew he was going to get more than people thought because of the O-line tax, because of the price to pay a free agent in his 20s, left tackle with experience, but even more than what I thought he was going to get. So I'm happy for him. He's worked hard. He deserves it. Great teammate, durable, did all the right things in Pittsburgh. Is that more money than I would have paid him? Absolutely. But I'm just super happy on a personal note for Dan Moore. Took a lot of grief in Pittsburgh and now secures the bag.
Yeah, the Steelers were. You can bet Steelers were nowhere close to that, even if they wanted to retain him.
Yeah, I'm betting they never even made an offer to retain Dan Moore Jr. Najee Harris for the Chargers, Dave. We speculated that for a little bit now. That made a ton of sense. I think it's a great fit for Harbaugh's physical brand of football. He goes out west. I think somebody even said Harbaugh tried to recruit Harris out of college while Harbaugh was at Michigan. So to me, that is it's a 1-year deal. I thought maybe it'd be a multi-year deal, but it's a great fit overall.
Yeah, they dumped Gus Edwards, and isn't their other running back a free agent?
J.K. Dobbins. Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins is a free agent there. I was curious that it was a 1-year deal. But this is kind of a prove it type situation to see how he fits in their situation. I would imagine that the Chargers might draft one or bring in a free agent or something like that to kind of thunder and lightning along with him there. And the money was a little bit lighter than kind of what I expected Najee to hit. I kind of thought he'd crack that 10 million mark, but the fact that he agreed to just a 1-year deal and early on lets you know that there probably wasn't much of a market out there for him.
The deep running back class in the draft certainly, I think, impacted things. So 9.125 official on
9.25 was it?
Right around there. So just a tick under 10, a hair over 9. I mean, it's about what we thought, 9, 10. We're splitting hairs at that point. I just thought it'd be a multi-year deal. Is this Harris hoping, okay, I'll play this year and then cash in again one more time next year? Maybe that was just what the market was offering. But either way, it's a great fit. I think Harris could have a really strong season out there in LA.
We don't know if that's up to or anything like that, do we? With him?
I can't recall. I thought I saw something about up to language, but I may not have. I could be. It's been a haze the last 24 hours of a crazy free agency.
All right. I'll break that down as soon as it comes across at some point here over the next couple of days here. But we knew he was going to be out the door, and he is.
What I thought would be a one-year deal became a multi-year deal for James Daniels, signing that 3-year, $24 million contract with the Dolphins. I thought maybe off the torn Achilles, the best play was to take a one-year deal, prove himself, have a good year, get healthy, then cash in next year when he will still be in his 20s. But getting that multi-year deal does provide some semblance of security. The guard market's really exploded. Daniels did not partake in that. Frankly, his contract was almost identical to the 3-year deal he signed with Pittsburgh a couple years ago. That's reflective of the injury, obviously, but still, I think a solid deal for James Daniels, and one I thought that happened a whole lot quicker than I expected.
Yeah, it did happen quicker than what I expected. Good for him. Not a good guy overall here. Unfortunate that he had his injury. I mean, his season cut short by that injury last year. Still got some youth to him overall. And look, we knew going into the 2024 season that he was not going to be in their plans, right?
Right, yeah, that writing was on the wall, essentially confirmed after the team drafted Mason McCormick, and Omar Khan made that note they had some free agents to be, and so that was always going to be the case. And of course, Pittsburgh thought that Daniels would be healthy and then have a $20 million type of average yearly value on the market. That's what would have happened had Daniels not been injured, but gets a good deal from Miami.
All right, out the door he goes.
And you mentioned Dante Jackson, like Najee Harris going to the Chargers, 2 years. What was the money on that? 13 million, 14 million?
I don't
Maybe
remember.
less than that. Right around in there. It was a 2-year deal for a couple million per season. I think it's a fair contract for Dante Jackson.
All right. Yeah, he's out the door as well too. I think the big takeaway here is the compensatory value board at this point.
Right, and just to put a button on that, 2 years, 13 million for Dante Jackson. And you're right. The big takeaway, even though Pittsburgh's not made any big free agent signings or reported signings, the Metcalf trade is obviously the massive move there and shouldn't be forgotten about. But Pittsburgh, based on where they're currently at, and things can change, but they are slated to actually get quite a few and quite a few quality comp picks for the 2026 NFL draft, the one next year that will be held in Pittsburgh.
Yep, and it looks like the Steelers, I mean, so far, the only canceling out they have is the Malik canceling out Elandon Roberts now. So they are still in line to get the max amount of compensatory picks, and barring them going, well, obviously, I mean, you still got Russell Wilson. What's going to happen with him? Will he go on at least on the positive side of the ledger at some point? We'll have to see, but they're in good shape, at least when it comes to compensatory value this early on, because obviously DK Metcalf was acquired via trade. That's not going to be on the board as an ad. Assuming Darius Slay gets done after being cut, that won't hit the compensatory value board because he was cut. Who else? I mean, that's where we're at right now as far as signings goes. We'll have to see. And Aaron Rodgers, if he comes, it will be after a cut, so that won't hit the board as well too. So this team looks like it's going to come out of this offseason with at least 3 compensatory draft picks and potentially even the max of 4.
And high picks at that, Dan Moore's going to bring in third-round compensatory value. There's no question about that. Potentially get a 4th for, say, Justin Fields. So to clarify, I may have missed it. So Harrison would cancel out Roberts and not cancel out Dante Jackson?
Right. That's what Nick Corte has right now. He has Malik canceling out Elandon Roberts.
Okay, that's fantastic. I wasn't even sure because I wasn't sure if Harrison would cancel out Jackson because their contracts were semi-similar, so that's great news. Now, it also should be noted playing time impacts comp value, and so this is a fluid moving target throughout a season, but contracts obviously have a lot of weight in determining compensatory value as well. If Pittsburgh makes more signings, that can have an impact, and so we talk about comp value, not necessarily true compensatory selections, which won't be known until really the entire 2025 season is in the books.
The thing to watch at this point, if you're a Steelers fan, because most of the notable guys now at this point who are unrestricted free agents are off the board, except for maybe Russell Wilson, right?
Thinking back in my head, I mean, there are some others that could sign, Loudermilk, Herbig, but in terms of big money guys, yeah, I think it's, I mean, unless Mike Williams got a contract somewhere that was at decent money just because the receivers get paid, fair amount. But Wilson's the big outstanding name, yes.
Right. And look, going down the list here real quick, I'm not seeing anybody else that jumps out that will hit, that will qualify, heavily, more than a, veteran much more than a veteran benefit contract and all like that, other than Russell Wilson. We'll see where he lands and all like that. So, at this point, they're looking good, once again, when it comes to compensatory value.
Which is something they don't often get much of. They are unlikely to get a pick for 2025. I don't think they had one last year either. I think they last maybe had one 3 years ago. I wrote about it recently. We can look back, but yeah, should get a couple picks and a couple of high picks at that, which might be nice to use to trade up for a quarterback.
Yeah,
Is
very well
Pittsburgh
could.
maybe making a play here to have some forward thinking with a murky quarterback situation, no matter where they go for 2025? Are they kind of trying to set themselves up to maybe make that big splash move in 2026?
Very well could be. They're gonna. It sounds like they're gonna have the ammunition to do something like that.
And I would endorse it for sure. I think that is still the true path to get beyond the stuck place Pittsburgh is at right now. All right, Dave, kind of winding down here on a somber note, I do want to mention this. I know it might get lost in the craziness of yesterday, but some sad news that former Steelers offensive lineman and broadcaster Craig Wolfley passed away at the age of 66 years old. I think it was an illness. I don't know the exact situation there, but just sad. He worked in the booth. He just moved up to the booth to replace his good friend, the late Tunch Ilkin, and a guy that spent a decade playing offensive line in Pittsburgh and spent over 20 years as a broadcaster and analyst, and somebody that was funny and could make you laugh, but also teach you the game as well. It's a hard thing to do. It's rare to see, and I thought Wolf did it really, really well. He was active in the community, and so he'll be certainly missed.
Boy, what a shocker that was to come across the feed yesterday there, Alex. And 66, man. I'm seeing 60 out in the forefront of myself right now, and 66 is young. I tell you a quick little story too. Obviously, following the Steelers all these years, you know who Craig Wolfley is, just, outside of his playing days with his team. A very charismatic, funny guy at the time, the duo of Tunch and Wolf, kind of legendary when it comes to Steelers fans and radio and commentary voices and all like that. But I can remember back as a kid, Alex, when I think I was 12 years old at the time, and I went to Atlanta Fulton County Stadium to watch that preseason game between the Falcons and the Steelers and all, and got outside towards the buses and all after the game and all like that, and find a couple players to take pictures with. Craig Wolfley was one of the players. Got a picture taken with as a kid. At least one of the surviving snapshots that I remember we had in the picture drawer there. But what a relationship he had with Tunch Ilkin. I guess the only positive thing here at this point is reunited with Tunch Ilkin. Again, and Mike Webster, because the three of those guys were evidently really, really good friends together. And unfortunately, all three of them have passed. I didn't even know he was sick and all like that. I mean, it doesn't seem all that long ago. The Steelers released that pro shop, that funny pro shop clip on Twitter and YouTube of him using all those kind of catchphrases that all the youth use these days and all like that. So that did come out of the blue. Just so sad, and thoughts and prayers obviously to his family, and yeah, just sad. I had to look at that 2 or 3 times to make sure that the news was real.
Me too, and beyond football and beyond Pittsburgh, his church work, community work. I attended a couple of the Man Up events that Mike Tomlin holds each year, and Wolf was often a speaker for those, and had just a great quasi sermon. And so certainly, as you said, be missed. And 66 is just so young.
Yep.
All right, Dave, difficult as it is to transition, I think we've kind of hit on all the immediate Pittsburgh news. I'm sure a lot more is going to pour in probably by the time people listen to this. If there's any time for reader emails, we can do that. If not, we can kind of begin closing out today's show.
All right, let's see here. Is anything late breaking news coming in at this point? that we need to address? Let's double
Not
check that before we get out of here.
Yeah, not that I'm seeing urgently, but again, I imagine quarterback's going to get resolved by end of day today, but maybe I'm assuming too much in that.
Let's get to the email machine. Jason Chadwell says, "Hi, David Knox. I'm sure you're receiving plenty of emails with the start of the legal tampering period. From my perspective, the Steelers are a rudderless ship with no clear vision. For example, why does the team insist on signing older cornerbacks as 1-year stopgaps? When are we ever building for the future, or at least a 2 to 3 year window? And the same can be said for quarterbacks, signing older guys, either Wilson or Rodgers, with no future and always starting back over. This team is destined to stay one and done in the playoffs," Jason writes. The title of the email is Rudderless Ship.
I've had the same thought, Dave. This is a team that talks about what it wants its quarterback situations to look like, and I know everything can be unpredictable, but last year it was, Pickett and Rudolph, ends up being Wilson and Fields, which, in fairness, was an upgrade, not the wrong direction to go. I think still overall, even in hindsight, this year we want to bring back Fields, want to bring back Russ, one of those two guys. Does not appear that's going to happen either. Obviously won't be Fields, not looking too good for Wilson right now. So what is the direction for this team? What is their plan? As I've talked about, this Rolodex of different veteran quarterbacks getting signed, 1-year stopgaps, try something else the next year. It is a mess. It does feel chaotic. It feels like there is no stability for a franchise that's supposed to be built around stability. Navigating post quarterback Hall of Famer retirement waters is not easy to do, but Pittsburgh is really struggling right now to have a coherent plan.
You come out of the shoot on Sunday and making the trade for DK Metcalf. We expecting it to be a little bit more stuff from the look. I mean, the free agent losses aside, I mean, a lot of those guys we knew were probably going to be out the door anyway, right? So I mean, I don't want to focus on the aspect of the unrestricted guys that they lost. But were you expecting some other sort of thing to happen other than a Malik Harrison signing yesterday and the Darius Slay maybe news?
I don't know if I had real expectations. I tried to go in with a pretty open mind in terms of when things will happen. I thought receiver and corner were the two things besides quarterback to get addressed, and those have been really kind of reportedly the two things addressed. I just thought quarterback would get resolved by Monday.
I did too.
I mean, for some positions, does a defensive lineman not sign because there's no quarterback? Probably not. It comes down to money. But I do think your franchise is still largely on hold until your quarterback situation can be figured out. And Metcalf was a trade, and he got the money he wanted, so that kind of makes more sense of why that was able to occur. But for more outside free agents, I think it's hard to get some of those guys if you're just uncertain about who is the quarterback for this team, the face of your team.
Other than a quarterback, Alex, are we going to see? Obviously, DK Metcalf's going to crack that ADP or AYP number of Cam Hayward. Are we going to see anybody else from the outside top that other than a quarterback?
I'm not expecting it right now. No.
Yeah, it's hard to. I mean, who would that even be at this point, right?
Right, simply just because there aren't enough of those high-priced free agents still on the board. I mean, I'm not even sure who the best free agents are available right now at a position of even semi-need for Pittsburgh. I'd have to look at a list, but, I mean, the list has dried up pretty quickly.
All right, as we always like to say, though, let's watch the rest of this thing play out. But it's understandable that we're getting emails like that. Dan Hendrick writes in, "Hey fellas, is it safe to say after they sign a quarterback and Watt, the cap money is about gone? I know they need to sign some guys on the team still that they can hit the bargain bin for depth. Also thoughts on acquiring USAC since Arthur Smith likes fullbacks." They're still going to be fun. Dan, once they're going to a Watt extension should actually lower his cap number. It will eat up some cash, some additional cash, yes, but Watt's cap number should actually come down as a result of an extension whenever that gets done. DK Metcalf right now has a cap number of $18 million as he walks in the door. Once that extension gets done, his cap number should go down. Now, whatever the cap number of the quarterback contract, obviously will eat into some of that, and obviously the tendering of Jalen Warren ate up, I don't know what, $4 million or so in additional cap space. They're still fine from a. You do have to wonder now at this point though, because man, I'm not going to get a chance to brag about my cash prediction today. From last year, Alex. We're going to have to set some time.
We'll do a special episode.
We might need a special episode so I can gloat about the 2024 cash prediction. No, I'm kidding there. I'm kidding, but I'm not. But
I know.
When it comes to cash and all right now, this team is still, even with the TJ Watt extension, we'll see what the first year cash is on a quarterback contract. It makes you wonder now, and obviously with the DK Metcalf, what the first year cash on that, there's still going to be a little bit of cash money left over at some point. Long story short, Dan, they're still going to be relatively fine from a cap and a cash situation there. Now, are we going to see this team hit the bargain bin for depth? We always do. The thing is will there still be a couple of moderate $7 or $8 million APY contracts in here?
We'll see. I imagine, there's going to be something going on. It's not going to be nothing. Defensive line help still could be on the way.
Right.
Slot corner potentially. The veteran offensive line depth, safety depth. We're going to see some moves, but probably the big move is going to be quarterback, obviously, and trading for DK Metcalf.
All right. What about you, Sec?
He's old. I mean, the age and Arthur Smith has used a fullback, but it's generally been more of a true blocking type, and Juszczyk is more of a chess piece. So my first thought is no on that, but not going to rule it out.
All right. Let's see. Brett Niles says, I have a couple additions to Alex's offensive free agent wish list. I think there are two names we should consider for the backup tackle, both ex-Steelers. One, he has Zach Banner. The team liked him, and he even won a starting spot. It was injuries that derailed his career. He's making a comeback in the UFL. If he's healthy, he's certainly a better option than LaRaven Clark. Number two, Chuks Okorafor. Backup tackle is a hard needle to thread. You need someone who can't get a starting spot somewhere else, still being someone you're not afraid to put on the field. Okorafor has been cut by two teams in the last 2 years, so he should have no illusions about starting, but you would not be afraid to put him on the field if need be. He says neither of these would be an early free agent option, but as fallbacks, he says he thinks they make a lot of sense. First and foremost, you got to see if Banner can still play in the UFL, and the fact that he's stayed unemployed all this time. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I'm glad Zach Banner's continuing to play football, but it really feels like the Zach Banner ship has sailed for starters.
Yeah, I would say at the least he's got to go through the spring. You would watch him this year, which they're going to evaluate. The pro scouts will evaluate the UFL and see how he looks, and maybe he comes in around OTAs, June or so, whenever that season wraps up, or around training camp. But you're not going to do anything before you get to watch him for a full season, and you get a good feel for how that knee holds up, how he looks. And Okorafor, listen, he walked away. He retired last year, so I don't even know what he's doing right now. He didn't like how things ended in Pittsburgh, getting benched, getting Tomlin's doghouse. I mean, those are like real flyers that you would do late in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, do you even want him back even at a minimum right now? Does he even want to play football anymore? You got to really question a lot of things about Okorafor at this point.
Yeah, did he drop 30 pounds because he's no longer playing football? And it's like Mason Cole, we thought maybe Cole could come back one day, and then we realized, okay, this guy's like 200 pounds right now, and all that O-line weight melted off. So going to probably say no to that one on Okorafor.
All right, Sean and Kim. Sean writes in, good evening, guys. I just finished listening to the Sunday night podcast, and I have a little gripe. You guys always say you never like to talk in absolutes, but when it comes to TJ Watt extension, you're talking that it absolutely will happen. He says, nobody wants TJ to retire a Steeler more than me, but there has to come a line in the sand with franchises for non-quarterbacks with an APY. What if this doesn't get done? The number gets too high, and they put him on a trading block to maybe package for a quarterback already under contract or recoup some sort of draft capital. He says, I never want to say never. and it just feels this should have been done by now, and nobody is giving any thought or percentage of chance of it happening any other way. Absolutely love the show. You guys are the best. Look, you're right. I mean, it is dangerous to talk in absolutes, but when it comes to something like this, and based on what Omar Khan has said, and based on this team has to spend cash this offseason, I mean, it's hard to come away when talking about the potential of TJ Watt and an extension this offseason, anything other than 99.98% chance of it happening.
Yeah, Dave, you even made that reference of we don't talk in absolutes very often, but in this situation, you might make the exception. I do think the negotiation is tougher, and if we're wrong, then we're wrong, and we'll talk about that. If they were to trade TJ Watt, it's really hard for this team if they sign Aaron Rodgers to make that big move for Metcalf to then turn around and trade TJ Watt.
Look, and what? Yeah, I mean, I get it. He says we always say that we never should. We've learned less. Sean says we've learned our lesson over years. I get that. I do. But I mean, if they're, I would, my wife would kill me. I would bet my house on this one.
And it wouldn't make sense to get a guy like Rodgers and then turn around and trade TJ Watt if signing Rodgers is partially to try to maximize on the rest of Watt's career and of his prime.
I mean, Sean, I get it. And look, anything can happen. And obviously you don't, hope the guy stays healthy and all like that. And, but I mean, this is almost as surefire of a thing as anything out there when it comes to TJ Watt.
Yep, and sooner the better. It's already been too late, but sooner would be better to get a deal done with TJ Watt.
All right, Jeff Berg about DK Metcalf stats. I'm excited about Metcalf signing. I looked up his league ranking and stats in 2024, and he was 25th in yards, 42nd in receptions, 16th in yards per reception behind Austin. How likely do you think he'll ascend to the top 10 in some of these categories with us? And if it's not likely, is the price tag too high? He says, I guess it all depends on who will be throwing the ball to him, which is still unknown. Yeah, quarterback definitely going to make a big, play a big part in this. Look, is DK Metcalf going to be a 100 reception guy for this team? Probably not.
No, neither him or Pickens are the volume type of guys. They are not that traditional classic X receiver AB type that's going to get 110 balls a year.
Is his stats going to reflect, at least in 2025, what they're paying him in cash?
I mean,
which we don't know yet. We don't know if there's guaranteed money past this year yet either. Any of that.
Yeah, his way to win is not through volume alone. It's through big plays. It's through downfield catches, touchdowns, yak. I mean, it's going to be that type of thing with DK.
And look, if you want a guy like him, you want a top wide receiver on the market, you got to go out and get him, and you probably got to overpay a little bit to some degree.
Agreed. I mean, if he can have the seasons he's been having, or an A.J. Brown-like season like Arthur Smith had in Tennessee in 2019 and 2020, you probably sign up for that.
All right, Blake Literal. Hey, guys, Blake Literal here, longtime listener. I just want to say, Dave, your voice is iconic. Oh, God. I know you don't think so, but brings me so much joy and comfort. I'm on new medicine for bipolar, but it's not helping helping with the stutter and all like that. I didn't think it would, but people at this point, they either like my voice or they don't. So if you're still listening, kudos to you. I wouldn't say it's an iconic voice, though. My question is which Buckeye player or two would you love to see become a Steeler, and do you think it's possible? As always, R.I.P. to Dave T. Miss him every draft season. That's a good time to mention Dave T. I was thinking about him the other day as well, too. All right, which Buckeye player or two would you love to see become a Steeler? I guess draft or free agents or anything at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to think about it. I have no idea off the top of my head. I mean, it's the running backs, obviously Henderson and Judkins. I mean, I'll tell you, probably cheating here a little bit, but in in a couple of years, give me Jeremiah Smith, the receiver in
There you
Pittsburgh.
go. What about Abuke?
Yeah, Buka's going to be talked about a ton. I mean, I still probably want to get into his tape a little bit more. But obviously, I mean, I think receivers still off the board in the first round. It's hard to see this Arthur Smith offense go take a first round receiver. So I think the Ibuka dream for those who had it flickered out with a DK Metcalf deal.
I'm trying to even remember who might be a free agent from Ohio State that's still out there and not agreed. I'm drawing a blank. I don't have a list in front of me, so Blake, I can't really help you there, but appreciate the email there. All right, anything else we want to get to here?
Just quick mentions. Kenny Pickett traded to Cleveland, so back in the AFC North, could very well see Pickett in 2025, and Patriots potentially shopping quarterback Joe Milton. And so if you want any sort of maybe name for a backup option, developmental type, Milton, Howards of an arm, don't want to rule that out either.
All right, it is almost noon Eastern time. We burned up about an hour and 45 minutes. We thought this show might be an hour. There you go. Alex and I'll be back when? Tomorrow?
Who knows? Stay tuned. Potentially tomorrow when quarterback news breaks. Certainly do a podcast reacting to that. Just stay tuned.
All right, stay tuned and probably watch the Pat McAfee show today. All right, in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at easy for me to say, at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Thank you for the live stream turnout Monday night. Wow, what a turnout we had. Thank you for everybody that tuned in for that. Thank you for everybody that tunes into the podcast, reads the site. Record day, single day for traffic on SteelersDepot.com on Monday. So we thank everybody for that as well, too. So until we get together the next time, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.